first you've got to have it here. If you don't have it here, you don't have it. There's no barrier anymore. Kids today don't really think they have to learn, that they can just add water and it happens, but it doesn't last.
Hi, Joyce. Thanks so much for coming by here, because what we try to do with the artist series for the Sessions panel is to offer to this next generation and to future generations information and insight to the backstage of what happens in the music industry, so people can kind of see what was going on when they hear their songs and their artists. There's some pretty intense situations going on backstage, and you have had and continue to have an incredible life of what you have done, really, and what you continue doing. And being married to Sam Moore for 37 years, there's not an award big enough that can be given to you.
There isn't enough combat pay.
Right? Incredible. He is magic in his own right for what he does, for sure.
He is, and you said something in his interview, and I want to thank you for saying this to him, and hopefully maybe getting him to really realize the influence and the impact of who he is and how he's presented himself from the first time he ever picked up a microphone and opened his mouth. He doesn't, it's funny, he's very humble because he really doesn't walk around. He's not one of those guys, and there are many of them in the industry where, you know, you open a refrigerator door and they do a show. Sam's not like that at all. And he kind of doesn't always, when he says, I don't know how they know me, they want to sing with me, I don't know how they know me. He means it. He really is that, I don't know whether it's unaffected or just, he just doesn't live in that space. And it's great on the one hand, and on the other hand, on the business side of it, and trying to get him to understand that he needs to be more social or more this, that, or the other thing is probably my greatest frustration. And it's because he just doesn't see himself in that capacity.
You know how I see it? I see it as an incredible gift of humility. That he has been given this talent, that he just shares it. And as he shares it, he gives it away. And it's not important who it's influencing. His responsibility is just to share it.
Well, yeah, to a point. He's very guarded with it, though. Sam is extremely protective of it. He knows it's a gift. At 83 years old, almost 84 years old, he opens his mouth and you would think that he'd been rehearsing and practicing and running scales and doing all this stuff. It isn't, and it's there.
It just happens,
And it's scary, and it's amazing, and I've witnessed it for years and years and years. He's very protective of it.
But that's the blessed journey that you are on and that you have been on. In the 60s, you come down to Miami, you go to school. What did you go to school for?
I was a business minor with a drama major, and then I flipped it and I was a business major with a drama minor.
So this business major that you ended up having, this paid off big time because you were able to be influenced and being behind the scenes with so many great artists.
Well, yeah, except I didn't start behind the scenes. I had a record deal.
Oh, interesting.
Let's go back a little bit, because I think this is really important. When I was down here at the University of Miami in 1963 and 1964, it was before the Civil Rights Act. It was as things were evolving. And my friends and I didn't think twice about going over town into the black neighborhoods to the Sir John or the Night Beat, to the Island Club. We didn't think twice about personal safety issues or anything. And
Those were all black clubs?
These were all black clubs in the hood, in what was considered, but then it wasn't really people lived. We never thought about it, and nobody ever brings this up. My generation, I was born in 1945. The kids that were born just as World War II was ending, 1945 and into 1946, most of us had black women taking care of us. If we lived in Chicago or in urban areas, Chicago, Detroit, Washington, New York, etc. So we never saw color. We saw women that we loved, that loved us, that cared about us, that cared for us. So we were never indoctrinated or inculcated with the race stuff that forward into the baby boomers, it started for whatever reasons, kind of like churning again. We didn't have that. We didn't see it.
Yeah.
So there's a generation of us that I know, my friends, we're all very angry and very frustrated at what we watch and what we see happen and happening today.
Interesting. So you got this record deal?
Yeah. I was signed by H.B. Barnum, who was producing at the time Lou Rawls, O.C. Smith, Don Ho, Tiny Bubbles,
Yeah.
Cannonball Adderley, which is a whole Sam story. Sam actually is the reason that Cannonball Adderley wound up Cannonball Adderley. He had been Julian Adderley, the music and band teacher at Dillard High School in Fort Lauderdale. And Sam, I think he mentioned that he got sent to Fort Lauderdale as a freshman in high school. And Cannonball at that time was still just Julian, and he was the band teacher. Sam's aunt was the dean of women students at Dillard High School. He decided that the way to get girls, I'm outing him now, was if he could play like a brand new, big, shiny, sparkly saxophone. And he convinced his aunt, as he convinced Johnny LaMello many years later that he had opened for Sinatra at the Fontainebleau, he convinced his aunt to buy him a brand new, beautiful saxophone. And of course, Aunt had her influence, so she was able to get him into the band with Julian Adderley as the band teacher. I don't think Sam knew what a reed was, okay? And so he's sitting in music class, he's in band class now, and he's, oh yeah, and I'm, cocky little guy. And his music teacher, his band director, asked him to play Mary Had a Little Lamb. Okay? He said, you play? Oh, yes. Play Mary Had a Little Lamb. Okay? Mr. Adderley got so angry, he took Sam's horn, his beautiful brand new horn, told his aunt. Sam got thrown out of the band, but here's what happened. Mr. Adderley had been playing trumpet. And if you look at Julian Adderley's mouth, his lips were too big for the aperture.
Oh, is that funny?
If it hadn't been that he confiscated Sam's alto.
How interesting.
Okay? Just as a fluke, it was one of those, it was supposed to happen kind of things. And he started fiddling around with Sam's alto, with the alto that his aunt had bought. And that is how Julian Adderley became Cannonball Adderley. Now, I get signed to a record deal. I get moved to Los Angeles. HB's secretary picks me up and takes me straight to the studio, to Capitol Records, to the big studio where they are cutting the Mercy Mercy sessions on Cannonball Adderley. Oh, my hand claps are, you can't make this up, okay? So yeah, weird happenstances, coincidences, just crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Crazy, crazy stuff.
Fate was speaking very loudly at that time.
It was screaming.
So at this point now, so what happened with that whole record deal?
I had a hit record. I wound up being rear-ended by a milk truck that ran the light and rear-ended me, and I spent 6 weeks in cervical and pelvic traction. My back and my neck were so messed up. And I was kind of like a white chick who could sing soul and kind of like power punch it out.
Yeah.
I couldn't sustain. So I wound up moving over to the back side of the business, to the business side of the business. And I do some session work still, singing backups on like O.C. Smith's to Hickory Hollow and stuff like that, HB every so often, but I wound up on the business side mostly.
How amazing, how amazing.
Yeah.
So with that now you get involved with the business side, you start to meet people, to manage them or guide them along the way?
Well, initially how I wound up getting my record deal was that I was actually the assistant maitre d' at Mr. Kelly's in Chicago, which was the consummate nightclub in Chicago at the time, and everybody, Flip Wilson and Dionne Warwick and Toady Field, Shelley Berman, all the comedians, and Barbara Streisand actually played there before she became famous.
Yeah.
Flip Wilson and Maxine Brown Flip had come in, that was the first album that Flip cut live. Maxine was on the show. I was upstairs in the liquor locker counting things and doing stuff, and the keyboard player whose combo it was, that was the backing band, Maxine was rehearsing, but she was rehearsing to a track or something that somebody else was playing, and I'm singing along, and he's going, "You can sing?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "No, you can sing." So things evolved from there.
Boy, to be around that time, I mean, and these are, Flip Wilson, these became huge stars.
I wrote jokes with Flip for his first special.
So you really started to get behind the scene, being a part of a major life.
Both sides of it. Yeah, at that point, yeah.
How much did your schooling assist you?
None. None. It was mostly osmosis. I mean, from being around it. I mean, I had trained to do summer stock musical comedy as a kid. I went to theater arts camp, and we put on productions of Brigadoon and Carousel and My Fair Lady and tributes to George Gershwin and Cole Porter and Oscar and Rodgers and Hammerstein and that. So I was very much into performing as a kid, and we appeared at the Pan Am Games one year. We were considered semi-professional. I guess I learned a lot just by osmosis from being in it, being around it, and then working at Mr. Kelly's, of course, when you're dealing with, at that level of entertainment, which at the time was the cream of the crop.
Absolutely.
I just picked it all up.
Boy, this is really where experience, on the job training. It happens right there. You're learning, and you have to react fast. You have to understand. You have to read people's minds. So I mean, that really is a
and
school.
I wound up as the lighting director 2 nights a week. When the guy that does the lighting for the stage had his days off, I wound up doing sound and lights. It was like, okay, sure, you can do sound and lights. Here's your crank, here's your this, here's your so I wound up doing sound and lights as well and learning that end of it very quickly.
Boy, on stage you've had experience, behind the microphone you've had experience, backstage, whether it's organizing, lighting, you really have had the full gamut. Listen, no school can teach this. No school can teach this in the process. So now, where did you start to hook up with, let's take someone like Billy Preston. How did that come about?
Billy wound up, actually the first time I met Billy, I was the assistant, I had moved to Los Angeles, of course, had the record deal, then the car accident and that. I wound up the assistant talent coordinator for Playboy After Dark. And my job basically was artist relations. So whether it was Ike and Tina Turner or Billy Preston or Sammy Davis Jr., Bill Cosby, it didn't matter who it was. My job was to make sure that the talent was comfortable and well taken care of, and that they had, I was the schlep, I was whatever it needed to happen at that time. Dressing room, make sure their dressing room was right. Whatever they, whatever was going on, it was my responsibility to make the talent comfortable and happy. And Billy played one of the gigs, and and I would talk to talk to the artist and that. And so I met Billy then, but I didn't really know him. It wasn't until Sam and Billy played 6 weeks. We went to Italy for 6 weeks in 1990.
Right.
And we literally played from one end of Italy to the other. We were up in Genoa all the way down to Capri. We were in Trieste. We were Santa Marini. We were literally all over the place.
Did you have any good meals while you were there?
I gained 12 pounds.
That answers the question. So
we didn't stop eating. We ate Italy.
Yeah, I hear you, as we all do when we go there. So the experience of doing that, you meet Billy. Listen, Billy was an incredible
Billy,
talent.
Sam, and I shared a car. We had one driver for the three of us.
Yeah.
Because the stars of the show of this tour was Sam and Billy.
Yeah.
And so the three of us literally drove from one end of Italy to the other for 6 weeks. When you're locked in a car with somebody for 6 weeks, you kind of get to know them, and we just had fun, the three of us. I mean, we were like the Three Musketeers, and then, and eating and just carrying on with the food and people and stuff. So yeah, it just...
And Billy, a phenomenal musician and writer, and considered the fifth Beatle. I mean, really.
To many people, yes.
Yeah. I mean,
there are those who argue it, and I can't understand why.
Yeah, no, that was.
But because he's the only one that ever got label credit.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for Billy, they probably never would have finished the Let It Be or Abbey Road, which are both now getting ready to have their 50th anniversaries.
Yeah.
Shortly after we did Italy in 1988. 1989, I was called upon. I was one of the founding directors of the Rhythm and Blues Foundation, Howell Beagle and I.
Beautiful.
I was called by Howell and said, you know, I had bumped into Lee Atwater. I met this guy, Lee Atwater, at the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival, and I had given him my card, and he told me that if I got George Bush elected, that he'd let me do an inaugural with my music, and my music is soul music. And so if I do, I'll call you up, Howell. Okay. This was in November. It was within a week, 10 days after the election.
Yeah.
And so I get this phone call from Howell. He goes, so Lee Atwater called me, and he's explaining this whole thing to me. And he goes, and I need you. He said, I need you to do the talent. He said, will you do that? And I said, well, gee, duh, let me think. I thought for exactly a quarter of a second. I said, absolutely. So I wound up initially as the talent executive on the George H.W. Bush inaugural that Lee Atwater was producing.
Incredible.
By the time it was over, I was the producer, I was the director, I was the writer, I was the talent executive, I was the schlep, I was just about everything, because I was basically, for better or for worse, the only person that actually knew the artists, knew the material, could put a show together, had experience from my background as a kid, staging shows and doing things and producing shows, between the drama and just all of it, and my experience, you know, as a performing artist and everything. And I wound up, it was my baby.
Boy, this is being a Renaissance woman at the highest level.
Well,
doing everything.
All I can tell you is when the Bushes walked into the Washington Convention Center, not to Hail to the Chief, but to Soul Finger. It was done, no, seriously, it was done so well, nobody to this day realizes that that's what they did. I remember standing along the rope, because part of what I got to do was greet them, and I remember pinching myself going, you know what, if you die now, you've done it, girl. And it was the most amazing, you know, it's like, how many people can say I produced a presidential inaugural?
Yeah.
And the talent for the show, Billy Preston was my music director. I had Dr. John on the opposite side of the stage, keyboards. I had Anton Fig from the Letterman Show as one of the drummers. James Robertson from Memphis, who was brilliant, the other drummer.
Yeah.
I had Duck Dunn, Steve Cropper, 6 horns, which were the horns that John Bon Jovi would used in New Jersey. There was the Jersey horns.
Yeah.
We had Albert Collins, Joe Cocker, Willie Dixon, and Lafayette Leake.
Oh my God.
Coco Taylor, Carla Thomas, Eddie Floyd, Chuck Jackson, Sam, of course, Delbert McClinton, Bo Diddley, and Ronnie Woods. This guy that's in Rolling Stones, Ronnie Woods, and Stevie Ray Vaughan in Double Trouble.
Oh my gosh.
With Jimmy.
With Jimmy, man. What a great.
It was an amazing. I mean, you know, the stories, the things, it's just, yeah.
These are names, again, that I say to this young generation listening and or watching. They have to do the research of who these people were and understand, and it's very easy now because of technology and the internet where it is, to find out about these people. But when they hear names of what you're mentioning, this is really strong history of our music industry.
It's something that it's hard to put into words.
Yeah, but
it's emotions.
That's why I love having you here. You know, we've had some of the greatest musicians in the world sit in that seat across from me. But I love the fact that what you have done and continue to do is this behind the scenes tsunami of a push that's helping this music industry move forward. This is huge. So now you go on, you meet other people. I mean, for example, like Jackie Wilson.
This was a long time before. It was kind of my if I write the book, it's going to be anything but boring, my life without the white picket fence, okay? All right, I mean, I got the title, if that's of any help.
Yeah.
My dad had just passed away, and he was in the ad specialty and premium business. He was one of the first guys, you know, if you bought toilet paper and you saved enough, clipped enough of the things you could buy, you could get or you could order a stuffed animal,
right.
You know, that kind of stuff. Yeah. Howard and I had gone to New York for the premium and incentive show. And we decided we were going to get married, so we went to the Diamond District. We were staying at what was then the Lowe's on 8th Avenue, around the corner from Mama Leone's. We walked to the Diamond Center, picked out a ring, he got a ring, but we had to have them sized. So we went back on the Saturday before we were leaving to go back to Chicago to pick up the rings. On the way back, we were at 49th and Broadway, Colony Records right across the street.
Interesting,
okay?
Yeah.
And I happened to look up, my dad had a 1965 Caddy, and we had driven it to New York, so I knew what the old Caddies looked like. I saw this brand new, beautiful, unbelievably beautiful Cadillac. I knew it was a Cadillac, but I couldn't tell, and it looked like it was a completely new body style, which it was. 66 is when they changed them. About 2 blocks up, there was no traffic in Midtown. And so I said to Howard, I said, hey, let's wait, I want to see this car. And Howard looked at it, he goes, yeah, let's wait, I want to see this car. So we're standing there, waiting for the light to change and for the car. The car literally pulls up. I'm as close, the car is as close to me and the curb as you are right now. And I look in the car and I went, Howard, that's Jackie Wilson driving the car. Howard looks in the car and he goes, if that's Jackie Wilson, I'm Herbert Hoover. Jackie, of course, heard it. The window was down. He sticks his hand out of the window and he goes, Herbert, my man, how you doing? That's how I met Jackie Wilson. Roll forward. We're in Miami. We're down here for our honeymoon 3 months later. We find out Jackie's playing at what used to be Harlem Square, which was became the Island Club.
Right.
I don't think twice. We don't even think about where it is.
Yeah.
It's in the hood. We don't pay any attention. Now, this is 1965, so things are changing a little bit.
Yeah.
But in a way, they're a little bit, but it's also just around the time the riots are starting and some of the other tumult is happening in places around the United States. We don't think twice about it. We go. Of course, we're the only white people there.
Yeah.
And we're kids. And we say to the guy at the door, can you please tell Jackie Wilson that Herbert Hoover and his girlfriend and his girl or the broad are here? And that we'd like to see him, we'd like to buy him a drink. I mean, we don't know. We're a couple of, And within seconds, somebody connected to Jackie comes and gets us, takes us upstairs, gives us the balcony seats right on the ringside, and says, he will love to see you. Just wait around till after the show.
Oh, great.
I mean, it was too crazy.
Yeah.
It's such a crazy thing that how do you forget? You can't forget Herbert Hoover and the broad. So that and so we talked to him, spent some time, and and changed, gave him phone numbers and that, and told him that when he comes to Chicago and blah blah blah. The next night, Howard and I go to the Barn, which was on 79th Street, the old Peppermint Lounge. See Wayne Cochran. We walk in. Who's there but Jackie and his lady? So we wind up sitting with Jackie and his lady for the whole Wayne Cochran show while Wayne, and then Jackie wound up taking Wayne on the road as an opening act.
How interesting.
So they come to Chicago to play the Regal Theater, we go, and it's just one thing after another.
How do you figure that? On a higher spiritual level,
Yeah.
why do you think all of this happened in this synchronicity of your life to bring you to these people?
You know what? I can only say this. God only knows, because he's the one who only knows. Seriously. I mean, I can't explain it. I wound up in situations, for example, after Jackie collapsed. Jackie and I became very close. We did have a relationship. We did have an affair. I don't talk about it. It was, but it happened.
Yeah.
And we were very close. And then things happened, and we didn't see each other for a while. And then after he collapsed, I was watching Rona Barrett, and Bobby Womack had claimed that he was out of the coma and he was this and that and the other thing. And I was like, I have to pick up the phone and call him and say.
And Rona Barrett was a TV show.
Correct. She was a gossip columnist.
Yeah, that's so that people know that. Yeah.
When I had heard about the collapse, I flipped out. I mean, it was the way that it was broadcast over the radio, which was in September 29th in 1975. I almost smashed my car. It was just like, it was just shock.
Shocking, yeah.
In any event, there was this news report that he was out of the coma, he was this, he was that, and he was doing better, and he was talking, and this, that, and the other thing. So I called the hospital, figuring I know he would take the phone call.
Yeah.
And I was going to give him a hard time. They wound up connecting me to the charge nurse, to Mrs. Robinson. And somehow, whatever I said to her, or however I posed myself for all the people that had called the hospital, trying to get information, trying to this, that, or the other thing, something how I said it or what I said. She told me everything, and she told me that Mr. Womack had not told the truth, that he was still semi-comatose, that there was all of this drama and all this stuff going on, and that they were trying to figure out what to do, and they were going to have to appoint a guardian, and blah, 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 and that he had been living with this girl, this woman in Marietta, Georgia, and they have 2 little kids, and then this other woman shows up saying she's the wife, and she doesn't want to see him, but she just wants his things, where's his jewelry. Oh yeah, the whole, and I knew enough, and then I found out also that Mama had passed away bedside of Jackie a couple weeks after the collapse. And so putting 2 and 2 together, Mrs. Robinson actually gave me Lynn Guidry Wilson's phone number in Georgia, and I called her. And she knew of me, and we talked, and she said, I need help. She asked me, she was telling me about court, and I said, well, but Jackie was divorced. And she goes, well, but can't find the papers, and Harlene's saying he's not divorced, and blah, 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 blah. And I wound up driving to New Jersey with my daughter, and I went to court, but I went to see Jack.
Yeah.
And he was having some lucid moments at that point. And everyone who was in the room, which included Felipe Wynn, Bobby Smith from the Spinners, Lynn, the nurse, they all believed that in a lucid moment he focused and that he actually recognized me.
Wow.
He'd recognized Lynn. There were things she could get him to do, to move his arms and do things, and he was starting to become responsive, pulling out of the coma. Things just happened. She had, Lenny was, the baby was only 6 weeks old when Jackie collapsed. She had the 3-year-old Thor. And my daughter was going to summer camp, and I was kind of in between situations, so I agreed to go back to New Jersey. We found a therapist by accident who had actually saved a girl that was in a coma, and blah, 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 blah. So I wound up going back to New Jersey for what I thought was going to be a couple of months, and I wound up moving and staying there for a couple of years with Jack, and he should have recovered. But for the fact that every time he made progress in his therapy, it got stopped. And there was motive and motivation. They were prosecuting the guy who owned the record label at the time, for fraud, for selling cleans out of the car, for payola, and tax evasion.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And he set Harlene up. He bought the guardianship, ultimately, for her. She just died a couple of days ago.
Incredible. You know, it's amazing, the behind the scenes story of what goes on with artists, as big as these artists are. But you've been privy to some incredible personal, even with Billy Preston and going through with all of his challenges and lawsuits that have gone on since his death, right? I mean, there's a whole...
I'm still in them.
You're still doing, I mean, this is incredible.
Still fighting the fight. You know, he trusted me. But listen, you haven't seen anything till you've seen Bruce Springsteen make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and watch the peanut butter and the jelly run down his arm in the studio. Okay, I mean, that's, you know, you want to talk fond memories, that's fond memories. Or you wind up being the one standing in the booth this close to John Bon Jovi when he's singing with your husband, because there's nobody else to take the camera and go into the booth with John to do the ISOs, and I'm standing there literally this far away from Johnny while he's singing and tracking vocals with Sam. Yeah, I mean, you know.
What other fun memories do you have in the industry? Because from the backstage view of what you've had, which has really been an incredible backstage view. Yeah. What else do you have?
Yeah, I cooked Thanksgiving dinner for Tom Jones and about 26 people and transported it to Mill Run one year, and they're walking around with big hunks of turkey. It looked like a scene from Tom Jones, the movie. There's so many things.
Well, this is why the book has to be written.
I know.
You know,
here's the start. They transpose this, please.
Absolutely, and I think if you find someone to transcribe what this is about, and then to dig deeper into the stories, and have somebody, a real good editor, come by and do this here, because this is you know, you have been given this incredible fateful gift that put you on a path that allowed you to be the thread behind the scenes of such great talent, and some of the challenges that have happened. And if this next generation can learn of some of those challenges, it could prevent them from making same mistakes. It could guide them along the way to maybe not get involved in alcohol and drugs, and to maybe clarify their life, that if they want a successful life in the music industry, there really has to be self-control and discipline that allows them to focus on the music and not the fun and partying that can happen.
They need to have the fire burning in their belly, otherwise it doesn't happen, or it shouldn't happen. I have to say this, today's August 29th. Today should have been Michael Jackson's 60th birthday.
Yeah.
Among my memories is the time that I worked for the family. Michael and I got into it one day and I got so furious with him. I called him a pickle and a crinkle because I couldn't bring myself to say curse words at him. He was a good kid.
Yeah,
I just, it breaks my heart. There's a lot there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of story there, but I just kind of, today, you know, I realize today is the day he should have been 60, and he should have been 60.
Yeah.
You know.
He had the genes to have a long life.
Yeah.
And again, this is the power of choices that people make in their lives, you know, and the loss of great people like Michael Jackson and Elvis and Whitney Houston. I mean, my gosh, these are.
Well, Michael's wasn't a Whitney Houston or an Elvis. He wasn't doing those kind of drugs. Elvis wound up addicted to drugs. Whitney was a drug addict. Michael was tortured and he couldn't sleep. And he wound up in the care of someone who had no business administering propofol to him for any reason whatsoever. Didn't have any of the proper gear or medical equipment, didn't know how to do CPR correctly. I mean, I could go on for 10, 15 minutes, but Michael was tortured. When he would go to sleep at night or try to go to sleep at night, he had visions of the abuse that he suffered as a child. And his father was hounding him because of the tour. He was hounding him. He would stand outside of the house that Michael was renting going, "Michael, you're gonna let me do this, Michael." And they finally took a meeting. This was a whole different set of things. Yes, after the burn and after all the surgeries and that, there was drug involvement, but it wasn't the same kind of situation. Look, Billy, everybody thinks Billy died because of the kidney failure or because of the crack or because of the drugs. It's not true. Billy had cleaned up. He was good. He was the victim of malpractice, period.
Well, this is an important message for this next generation to be aware of.
Well, there's another message. My husband, when Sam and I had known Sam in 1967 at the height of his career, and we were buddies in that, and things changed in 1981. In 1981, I had no idea that he was a heroin addict, and that when he couldn't get heroin, he would use methadone. Absolutely no idea. Found it out by luck, again, ask God. It was a God thing, a God wink. I happened to be watching a television news in Los Angeles that I never watched, which was Kelly Lang at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on NBC. They were doing a series of on addiction. The day I happened to just turn the television on random, they were doing heroin. There was an anti-opiate drug that was a test drug. There was a clinical trial for a drug called naltrexone. And it was being offered at a clinic in Oxnard, which was about a 45 to 50-minute drive from my home. And they gave the name and they talked to the doctor, Dr. Forrest Tennant, and the whole 9 yards. I took down the number. 5 minutes after the TV series, it was an hour series, you know, or a half an hour, whatever. I called Dr. Tennant, got him on the phone, told him that I was a manager. Didn't tell him it was a girlfriend. I told him I was a manager, that I had a client that was a heroin addict, but that he wants to clean up and blah, blah, blah. Is there any way I can get him into this clinical trial? He said, bring him down. Sam was in New York. I picked up the phone, I called him, I said, you need to come to LA. What? I said, well, you just need to come to LA. You gotta trust me. And he did, which was not even possible. And sure enough, he wound up on this test drug for the FDA in NIDA. He wound up on long-acting methadone. There was a 72-hour methadone. It was the first time he was ever getting methadone legally rather than on the street. And this was in November of 1981. By May of 1982, he was clean from a 15-year heroin addiction because of this drug, this anti-opiate. It blocks receptors in the brain. It's called naltrexone. It works. It was the best kept secret for decades because it's not profitable to cure addicts.
How you found this information, how you then had the perseverance and the diligence to contact him and put this all in forward motion is amazing.
Well, I don't know if it's amazing or I think I was just really naive. I didn't know you couldn't do it. Nobody came to me and said, Joyce, you can't cure a heroin addict. It was like, okay, so there's this, and you do this, and that's what you do. Sometimes
Amazing comes from naivety. That's all right.
Okay.
It's still amazing. You have incredible stories. Again, these people that are listening to us and they're hearing your message. In closing, what would you say to this next generation of musicians, of people that want to go into the music business? What would you say to them to give them a message?
Oh boy. First you've got to have it here. If you don't have it here, you don't have it. Talent, you know, there's so many really great talented people that never make it, that are really, really, really gifted, and they never get the lucky break. You have to be able to weather the storm, but you need to learn your craft.
Yeah.
And you need to, you know, I mean, and things have changed so much because of the internet and all the rest of it, that there's no barrier anymore. Kids today don't really think they have to learn, that they can just add water and it happens.
And it grows,
And unfortunately, in many instances it does, and with no rhyme or reason, but it doesn't last. I don't really know what to tell anyone, but other than, if it's not here, if you think it's in your pockets and it's change, it's not it.
Well said. Well, if fire is needed to be in the belly, in your belly, there's atomic and nuclear power. You have a flame that is absolutely burning, and burning stronger now than ever. Joyce, on behalf of the sessions, we thank you so much for joining us here.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Give the drummer some.
Yeah.
Thank you.